Illuminate Teens. Good to give you another lesson here today on how God hears his people. And the doctrine that we're going to be talking about is God being transcendent, that he's completely distinct from his creation. We're going to be talking about a name that he gives himself that really describes his character today as we get into Exodus and dealing with Moses. All right, so God sees and responds to the oppressed and the suffering. Sometimes you think that might not be true because you see so much of it around you, but believe me, he does. He understands, and let's just blow it out of the water right here in the very beginning. He's already sent his son to die for the oppressed and the suffering. Just in the same way that Moses helped God's people, the Israelites, be rescued from slavery, physical slavery, Christ was sent to rescue us from the slavery of sin. And so there is the offering up of Jesus. We need to have faith, just as Moses needs to have faith as he's called of God to go and do what he wants. But as we get into this, we transition from Joseph, who was second in command in Egypt, to a place where there's a new Pharaoh. Joseph's dead. But the Israelites, who were Jacob's family, Jacob transferred his name into Israel by God, and so they are called Israelites. Okay, and so that's where we get that name. But the Israelites are growing. The new Pharaoh is afraid. He thinks that they might turn on him and join with the enemies and rebel. And so he makes them into slaves, thinking that might curb some of their growth. The bondage might hurt them emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever it might be. He just wants to stop the Israelites from growing too much. He wants control. Okay? And that's a lot of times what happens with fear. When we are afraid of things, we try to grasp for control. And that's exactly what Pharaoh doesn't need to do in this instance, but he does it anyway. So he even gets to the point of when you're in the midst of fear, there's a lot of unreasonable things that happen that you justify. And one of the things that the Pharaoh did was that he started killing off the newborn male babies of the Israelites. Why? Because if you don't have males, you can't have children, right? And so that's what he's trying to stimulate, or to not stimulate, but the opposite of it. Trying to kill off the babies will curb the growth of the Israelites. You get rid of a whole entire generation of Israelite men. So as we get into this, he's got fear. And then we get into the story of Moses. Now, he wasn't named Moses until his mother tries to hide him from the Egyptians, but there's only so long you could do that. If you want to understand how it is to keep a kid quiet, just listen to my son trying to keep him quiet during a phone call or during the sermon or whatever it might be. Trying to keep a 2-year-old quiet would be very, very difficult. But she puts him in a basket and floats him down the Nile. And you say, how horrible. Well, he sends Miriam, the older sister, after just to make sure that he ends up with someone. So he ends up in the hands of the Egyptian princess, and she takes him in as a son, names him Moses at that point. And so Moses grows up within Egyptian society. Now he gets to the point where he sees that an Egyptian mistreats an Israelite, and he ends up killing the Egyptian. Bad news bears. Why? Because the Pharaoh finds out and he gets super angry, and so Moses runs away. He flees. He goes to Midian. He ends up getting a wife there, becomes a shepherd. He's watching after some sheep, and he grows his family, has children. And one day, you find something unique. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3 and verse 2. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. So his curiosity is piqued by this burning bush that isn't being consumed. In verse 4, and when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here am I. So God is actually speaking from the bush, calls Moses in. Moses says, I'm here. What happens next? And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. So there should be reverence here for where God is and where he's speaking. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. He knew who God was, and there should be reverence. There should be a healthy fear, and that fear is to be in awe of him, of all that God is. And it goes on and it says, in verse 7, and the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reasons of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, and to the place of Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So he says, listen, I've heard the cries of my people, and you're going to be the one that goes and gets them out of Egypt and takes them to this place that I want you to take them to. Now, did he ever say in that moment, did he says, I need a superhero in order to do this? No, he says, I just want you to go and do it. I'm going to make this happen. This is my plan. And Moses hears this, but I really want you to cue in. God hears his people in the oppression and the suffering that they go through. Can you imagine hearing just one person, and maybe you've had somebody vent to you, maybe you vent to other people. Can you imagine having 2 people vent to you at once? What about 3, 4, 10? I've only got so many fingers right here. What about thousands all at once? Thousands of people crying out at the same time. And God hears every single one. God cares. He listens, he knows, he sees what's going on, and he has a plan. And so it goes on in Exodus chapter 3 and verse 11. And it says, and Moses said unto God, Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? So who am I? I'm just Moses. And it says, and he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God upon this mountain. So the same mountain that you're on right now, you're going to serve God. You're going to serve me upon it. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers hath sent me unto you. And they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And it says, And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am, has sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. And so, what does it mean that he says, I am? I am, that term is there, is that he is a self-existent one, okay? He doesn't need you, and he doesn't need me in order to exist. We need him in order to exist, and we need others in order to exist, okay? I didn't just pop into this world. Guess what? 2 human beings had to parent me, take care of me. I am not self-existent. God is self-existent. He is transcendent, if I could say the word correctly here. He is very different than us. He's unique in his own self, and he doesn't need you or I. And this is what he's saying. He's saying, listen, I am self-existent. Tell him it's me. Tell him. You don't need anything else. The self-existent one is calling you out. And there's all kinds of excuses that he gives. Exodus chapter 4, verse 1, and Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. They don't want to believe him, And the Lord said unto him, what is that in thine hand? And he said, a rod. And he said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it. I would too. And the Lord said unto Moses, put forth thine hand and take it up by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. Now that would be a little bit more difficult for me. I don't touch snakes. Verse 5, that they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob hath appeared unto thee. So he's got these miraculous signs that he's going to... He actually put his hand into his coat and then pulled it out, and there's leprosy. And he says, now put it back in. And then he pulled it out again, and he was totally healed. I mean, this is God. He's just trying to prove to himself that it's God. It's not a matter of a pep talk that Moses needs. He doesn't need self-esteem. He just needs to know that God's calling him to do this, and he's going to make it happen. He just needs to have faith. That's what needs to happen. We're so down on ourselves that I can't do this. God calls me to do this, but it's me. I can't do it. You need somebody else. How will they know? God doesn't call us to be superhumans. He calls us to be his follower. Just follow me and I'll make it happen. And Christ came, like I said before, to rescue us from the slavery of sin. Have you made that initial following and just put your faith in God that he could save you from your sin? You need your own exodus out of slavery. It has to be through God, through his Son. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. That's what Jesus said. That's what Jesus said. So when you come back to this whole entire lesson is about reverence for God, understanding of who I am, who he is, understanding that he's called me and I need to follow and I need to have faith. How willing are you to follow when God asks you to? To do things that might not be something in your comfort zone, in your plan. But you know what? God hears and understands his people. He sees, he has a plan to rescue. Are you really trusting in that? I hope you enjoyed that today. I trust that y'all are doing well, and if not, we're praying for you. Keep up the good fight. Keep moving forward. And I hope to see you soon. We'll talk to you later.